What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and today we're talking about the Arizona Cardinals. We've made it to the NFC West, the best division in football. I'm excited to talk about the Cardinals today, and hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you do, please hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. And if you're new to the channel, want more sports content like this in your life, please consider hitting that subscribe button. And let me hear down in the comments section. I'd love to have your thoughts on this Cardinals team. I'm probably on the low side of the variables for how people see this team, but tell me how many wins you think they get, some X factors. I really cheated in that area today, and some games you're looking forward to watching them play. I'd love to have your thoughts. I respond to every comment, so let's talk about the Cardinals down in the comment section. Win range 6 to 12 wins. This is reminiscent of a video I did basically with the Saints, where it's like, yeah, that win range is so large, they're either bad or they're good, and that kind of feels like where this team is at. To me, everything either lines up and this team could be in that 12-win range and maybe even win the division. That would be pretty crazy. Or we get more of the Cliff Kingsbury recipe where things are just not optimized to their max potential. A lot of young players aren't fully hitting their stride. Maybe veterans are getting injured a lot. Guys like J.J. Watt, Chandler Jones have their injury problems in the past. Maybe those continue to pop up. And additionally, outside of Budda Baker, that secondary is a huge question mark. We're going to talk about that number 2 corner spot in a little bit. But this team, it feels like it's either all going to come together, going to be pretty good, or it's going to be more of the same. They're going to be a disappointment, and they're going to be in that 6, 7, 8 win mark. So I have them at the 7-win mark. Again, I know that's a little low, and especially considering you look at this team, like Kyler Murray may not have been the best quarterback over the past couple of years. He hasn't totally hit all expectations. I know some people are waiting to see more out of him, but he hasn't been a disaster. I mean, he's not Josh Rosen, right? He's not been, cut by every team within a year of him signing. So he's been solid. And he's good, and he brings a lot of dynamic ability to his game. And, the wide receivers are good. They only got better with Rondale Moore. So, again, there's pieces in place. This is as good a 7-win team there would be if they do finish with 7 wins. But a lot of it comes down to Cliff Kingsbury and his scheme overall, but we'll talk about that later. Realistic goal, finish over 500. If you get to 9-8, it's a step in the right direction. It's probably enough to keep Cliff Kingsbury's job. Reach goal, make the playoffs, whether it's the wild card or winning the division. The NFC West is good enough to field 3 playoff teams, and it probably will. Me personally, the Cardinals are the worst team in the division, but I'm also low on the Seahawks, so maybe if things really lined up right, you could change my mind. But overall, I think Seattle, San Francisco, if they're healthy, and Los Angeles are all playoff teams. That leaves the Cardinals out. Granted, there's 7 playoff teams, 3 wildcard spots. Maybe we'll see the first ever time where every team in the division makes the playoffs. I wouldn't put your money on that. So, reach goal, make the playoffs. It's possible, just not likely. That's why it's a reach goal. X factors. Let's dive into the man on your screen, right? This is the first time I've done a coach as one of these X factors, but it only felt right. Because you look at the roster and you're like, the offensive line's good. I like Chase Edmonds, James Conner. It's not an overpaid position for this team, but those guys are good enough to, get the job done. Again, I like Kyler Murray. The wide receivers are awesome. Like DeAndre Hopkins is still a top 3 receiver, top 5 receiver, however you see him, in the league. Rondale Moore looked fantastic in that first preseason game. AJ Green, we'll see what he becomes, but even if he's nothing great, Andy Isabella, Christian Kirk, Keyshawn Johnson, if he makes the roster. This team is loaded at wide receiver. And then Max Williams is a fine tight end. I actually think he's kind of underrated. But this team has weapons everywhere with a good offensive line. Then you look at the defensive side. They're gonna ultimately extend Chandler Jones. So I'm not really worried about him requesting a trade or wanting out. I think both sides sort that out. But him, J.J. Watt, Marcus Golden, there's some good vets that know how to get to the QB. A little worried about the interior, but J.J. Watt also helps out in the run. So we'll see. I like Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins, who we'll talk about in a moment, but 2 young, very different inside linebackers than what has been, the norm over the past few years. Budda Baker is one of the most fun players in the league to watch. Malcolm Butler still gets it done at a high level. Everywhere else is a bit of a question mark, but given how good the offense is, the defense shouldn't have to be anything, world-shattering. But ultimately, Cliff Kingsbury just doesn't feel like the guy to lead this team. And that's, it's okay. It's a part of the life of the NFL, right? You have plenty of coaches who are part of the journey that eventually leads a team to being one of the best teams in the conference, maybe even a Super Bowl. Like, think Tony Dungy with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Granted, Tony Dungy's a Hall of Fame coach, so this may not be the best example to compare him to Cliff Kingsbury. It's probably too much positive light for Kingsbury, but Tony Dungy just wasn't the guy to get Tampa Bay into the Super Bowl. And right after he gets fired, they replace him with John Gruden. and the stars line up, they win a Super Bowl. And maybe that's the future for Arizona. I'm just not sold on Cliff Kingsbury. I remember when he got hired, I was like, this air raid offense is interesting. But he's even backed off what, college air raid would be deemed as, and he started to modernize it and adjust it a lot. But part of it is DeAndre Hopkins has got to be more than just your left wide receiver. He has got to find ways to use him more. I like how he used Rondale Moore in that first preseason game. They already had a role carved out for that bubble screen, gadget type of player, but it was basically drawn up for Larry Fitzgerald. So I don't worry about that, but when you have a player like DeAndre Hopkins, you've got to be able to move him around. The NFL is moving towards versatility, not letting the opposing team know where any one player might be lined up, other than like offensive line and quarterback and all that stuff. But DeAndre Hopkins has got to be getting reps in the slot. He's got to be getting snaps outside, on the left, on the right, put him in motion. I just don't want to see him just thrown statically out onto the left. And I know they run a lot of no huddle, but to me, it's worth slowing down a couple seconds, bring that tempo down a little bit if you can move DeAndre Hopkins around. To me, it's worth it. And numbers and analytics would prove the same. So I'm not the only person saying that. So I think that scheme has got to modernize. Cliff Kingsbury has got to improve as a coach. He's got to be willing to change some of his philosophy if this team wants to get better. Kicking over to the defensive side, Isaiah Simmons had never played middle linebacker till last year, and he got better week by week. By the end of the year, he looked like a really good up-and-coming prospect. He looked like who we thought he'd be coming out of Clemson. And Zaven Collins, it was interesting. He put on weight before the draft and felt like, okay, this guy's going to play some outside linebacker. But then the Cardinals made it clear he's an inside linebacker. And in that 3-4 defense, Collins and Simmons really complement each other really well. Because Simmons is this uber agile, stellar athlete, fantastic in coverage. And Collins is good in coverage, but especially after he gained weight, he's not necessarily great horizontally. Like he wasn't great when he's left one-on-one against a runner. But if he's going up the middle, working north to south, he's pretty solid. I think he'll clog the run there. Plus, him as a blitzer, him and Simmons, really, as inside linebackers that can blitz from that spot, that's really intriguing too. So I am fascinated with how this experiment turns out. Given their strengths line up pretty well, but even their weaknesses, like what Simmons does well matches against what Collins' weakness might be, and then vice versa. So I am intrigued minimum. But I think this tandem can be really good. And if they are good, like I said earlier, I'm worried about the interior part of that defensive line. But if Simmons and Collins are good and it works right away, they will be enough to slow down opposing rushing attacks, which will obviously help this team a lot. And what else will help this team is somebody stepping up at cornerback too. This team, I don't know. I mean, they have players there that I like on paper. Like, I love Tate Gowan coming out in this draft. Don't know how he fell to the 6th round, but even expecting Tate Gowan to immediately be a big contributor might be flawed thinking. And then Marco Wilson, same thing. He balled out in that first preseason game, but it's backups. Like, and I hate that rhetoric and I hate that narrative, but 3 pass breakups against backups, it's not worth the same that it would be against starters. So we'll see as the preseason continues and as training camp continues. But Mark Wilson is an uber talented guy. He originally was starting over CJ Henderson at Florida when they both got there as freshmen. Ultimately, Henderson won out the job down the line, and Wilson has had his problems with his personality and some of his antics on the field. But if he can just stay, head on, be a football player, be a starting corner, I think he has the talent to do it. He'd probably be, if you took away some of the questionable decisions he's made, he's probably a first 3 rounds type of cornerback based off of talent, maybe first 2. But him and Gowan, one of them's got to step up and play on that outside corner spot. It's up for grabs. And if they can just get somebody who's average opposite of Malcolm Butler, that brings the floor of that defense up exponentially, because I've alluded to this in other videos. The Packers have 3/4 of the starting secondary that are fantastic, but that 1 weak component always gets picked on. And if Marco Wilson can't, be a big factor right away, if Tay Gowan isn't up for that, this team will get shredded through the air, because I worry about their other safety position. Malcolm Butler's good, but as a number 1, that's a little suspect. And then if they don't have a number 2 corner, then, throw it out the window. They're going to be playing shootouts week in and week out. So obviously that has to be an X factor. Games to watch. Week 2 against the Minnesota Vikings. These are 2 teams that I think are going to be competing for a wild card spot. So obviously it makes a ton of sense. Arizona's at home, so you'd like to see them come away with the win there. I think the Vikings are better on paper, but it's tough when you travel. So anything is possible for the Cards. Week 8 against Green Bay. Now, again, this is one of those where on paper, the Packers are definitely the better team. But it's Thursday Night Football, and Arizona's the home team, and there is a huge home field advantage when playing on Thursday night because you're playing a short week and you're not the one traveling. Green Bay, on the other hand, short week, traveling from Green Bay out to Arizona, and that affects your plans a lot, and that can take a toll on a team. So maybe Arizona can pull the upset, and it's national television. It's a narrative game. If Arizona were to take this game from Green Bay, there'd be a lot of buzz in a positive direction for this team. So that's a really intriguing game. Maybe they could steal one against a superior team. Week 17 at the Dallas Cowboys. This should be a fun shootout. I don't suspect a lot of defense in this game. And again, I think Washington football team is the team that wins the NFC East. So this could be a matchup for wild card seeding or a wild card spot between the Cowboys and the Cardinals. So it has to be a game that you watch. That's going to do it for my 2021 Arizona Cardinals season preview video. Tell me what you think about this team down in the comments section. How many wins do you think they get? Who are some X factors? Some games you're looking forward to watch? I'd love to have your thoughts. So let's talk about the Cardinals down below. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. And if you're new to the channel, want more sports content like this in your life, please consider subscribing. That'll do it for this video. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.